right, YouTube is setting up to go live. We're not quite live yet.
We're on it now.
Okay, and we are now live on YouTube, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Apologies for the technical difficulties. I now call to order the July 21st, 2020 meeting of the Revere School Committee. Please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Roll call the members.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo,
Here.
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Here.
Mr. Franti,
Here.
Ms. Gravellisi,
Here.
Mr. Sanella,
Here.
Ms. Ty,
Carol, you need to unmute.
Here.
Mayor Arrigo.
Here, we will begin today's meeting with public speak. And I know we do have a number of participants in the meeting tonight. I do want to remind everyone that we do have a limit of 3 minutes per speaker, and we will do our best to be mindful of everyone's time. Dr. Kelly, I know you have some controls over the number of participants and the folks who are there. I guess we'll just call a name and allow them to begin to speak.
Sure, and if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, I had a couple of communications that went to the email account since the last meeting. If I could start with those there.
Before we do that, Mrs. Rizzo.
Yes, can we just remind everyone prior to speaking, if they could state their name, their residence?
We will make sure that for the record, everyone's name and address is recorded.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first comment we had was from Ms. Carla Maniscalco, address 214B Brad Avenue in Revere. And she writes, I've been fortunate to be a teacher in Revere for over 20 years, and I love my job. This year, I'm very concerned about the issue of reopening schools. I truly believe that the only safe option at this point is to return to school using remote learning. If we return in any other capacity, the question wouldn't be if students and staff would become sick with COVID, but when they would become sick. As doctors continue to learn more about this illness, it has become clear that asymptomatic carriers can easily spread the disease, and that many who have dealt with the illness have suffered permanent and debilitating side effects. The only way to prevent this is from occurring in our schools is to use remote learning. Thank you for your consideration. I believe that we might have just gotten Mr. D'Ambrosio in, although I don't see him here. A second message is from Jamie Farrell of 67 Pearl Avenue, Revere, Massachusetts. And Jamie writes, I'm actually going to put this one off until I see Mr. D'Ambrosio come in. So I'm gonna move on to a number of people emailed. Dr. Mokaba, I'm gonna try to make you a co-host so that you can watch for Mr. D'Ambrosio, if you don't mind, as an attendee.
Yep, that's fine.
The next communication I wanted to share, there were actually a number of people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, all employees of the Revere Public Schools, all teachers, who sent similar messages endorsing the policy of the Massachusetts Teachers Association in regard to return to school. And so I'd like to read just a couple of them that were a little bit different than the others, but they all had the same message endorsing the Mass Teachers Association policy. And the teachers with these messages, the first is Rosie He from the Garfield Middle School, 63 Elm Knoll Road in Braintree. Michelle Gallo, also from Garfield Middle School, 33 Manor Road, number 2D in Beverly. James Anderson from the Lincoln School. Christine Ansert from the Beachmont grade 4, 34 True Street in Revere. Julia Galogli, 245 Summer Street in Somerville, also from Beachmont grade 4. And you know, one of the messages says, I teach at the Garfield Middle School. I'd like to say that I entirely support the MTA's reopening plan. This has been a difficult time for all of us, but we must keep students, teachers, and other staff safe. With the reported case of infants in Texas making news, it is becoming evident that children can indeed catch COVID-19. Massachusetts has been doing a great job of social distancing. I would not like to see the numbers skyrocket with students going back to school fully in the beginning of the school year at this point. Also, teachers will need time to plan how to effectively teach in different scenarios. And another one, the one from Mr. Anderson, I don't know if I said that was from Michelle Gallo, and the one from Mr. Anderson reads, Dear Revere School Committee members, rigor, relevance, relationships, and resilience have always been the backbone of Revere Public Schools. Rigorous instruction can be accomplished through remote education. The same rigorous teaching strategies used in the classroom can also be used through online platforms. Revere has been integrating technology into the curriculum for years, and there has never been a more relevant time. A pandemic is the preferred time for students and staff to apply and utilize technology skills. Educators strive for students to be college and career ready, and right now in 2020, the most prosperous jobs are ones using innovative technology while being remote. Kids nowadays often maintain relationships with their peers through online social media resources. If they can have meaningful relationships with their friends through technology, they can also have relationships with educators through technology. Children are resilient. We have always promoted resilience and being able to adapt during difficult times. This is it. We can only persist and recover if we are healthy. If the school community stays safe, then we will all have the chance to come back even stronger when the pandemic is over. 1 year online out of a lifetime of learning will not have long-term negative effects. Someday I will go back to having 25 people sitting crisscross applesauce on my rug, but until then, I'm up for the challenge of remote teaching. I support the MTA's proposals highlighted in the attached document. Please keep us safe. And the attached document that he's referencing is the document that Gina Garrow shared with all of you over the course of the last week. So with that, we have 5 raised hands in the audience. I wanna, is Barbara, let me see here. I'm gonna start with Gina. Gina, you should be able to unmute and speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So yes, Gina Garrow, 165 Hudson Street, Somerville. Yes, my name's Gina Garrow and I'm president of the RTA, and I am making this statement on behalf of myself and Olga Takori. Olga and I are both founding members of the Revere Education Justice Alliance, or RAJA. First, I want to thank you all for addressing the issue of equity and engagement this evening. However, we are speaking against the school committee's recent allocation of funds from the CARES Act to hire an assistant superintendent of equity and engagement. We both care very deeply about equity and engagement in the Revere Public Schools. We were at the forefront of securing Student Opportunity Act funds to address 25 years of inequitable school funding. We organized conversations between teachers, parents, students, and many of you on this committee to discuss the inadequate translation services that currently exist in this district. We initiated the development of the family engagement policy for the district and are in support of the motion for an equity board, both being presented this evening. But we believe that spending $160,000 for another assistant superintendent rather than investing in staff and services at the building level is an ineffective and inappropriate use of these funds. We support the hiring of parent liaisons at schools, which has been a request from parents and teachers. But in a time of a global pandemic, the public is demanding more direct level support, like more teachers, full-time paraprofessionals, counselors, translators, nurses, and of course, adequate PPE. Ensuring that our students in Revere have the direct services they need to be educated with the utmost safety at this time is addressing equity. Our students should have everything that students in suburbs have to be safe and to learn. And we request that you reconsider the allocation of these funds to better address the immediate and dire needs of our schools, that our schools have in order to reopen safely. And I do, however, support the motion for an equity board, which is being put forth also tonight. And I would encourage such a board to take the opportunity to look at systems that perpetuate inequity, such as an overemphasis on standardized testing. For 25 years since high stakes testing like MCAS has been instituted, the achievement gaps have only widened, and an equity board could be a place to bring teachers, parents, and students together to analyze the relationship between testing and equity. Thank you very much.
The next person that we have to speak is Juan Carlos. Juan Carlos. Oh, there you go.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Oh, now you can hear me. I wasn't sure you could. Thanks for the opportunity. So I was asked to speak about communicating effectively. One thing that we are concerned with the family engagement policy, and so these are a few things that we are suggesting to develop.
So actually, Juan Carlos, can I pause you for 1 minute?
Yeah.
We are going to have you guys speak as a group on the family engagement policy. I didn't know if you had your hand raised because you wanted to speak about something else.
No.
Okay,
Sorry.
so then I'm gonna move you back to an attendee, if that's okay. And when we get to that point, Dr. Garcia will call you up to speak.
Sounds good.
Is
Thank
that
you.
okay? All
Yes,
right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And just a quick reminder for anyone that's going to participate, please just share your name and address as long as you're comfortable with that. Thank you.
All right. So the next person is Nate Dory. And just don't forget to unmute yourself.
I'm on a phone and I think I must have raised my hand by accident. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna move you back. Thank you, Nate. All right. The next person is Ricardo.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I apologize. This is Madeline Ceballos. I'm a first grade teacher at the Hill. I'm on my husband's account, which is why it says Ricardo, but it's not Ricardo.
Hi, Maddie. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
I am a resident of Wakefield, Massachusetts, but as I said just now, I'm a first grade teacher at the Hill School. And I am speaking in support of the motion brought forth by school committee member Anthony D'Ambrosio to form an equity advisory board in Revere. I believe the need for this is pressing and ever evident, especially given the state of our country and our community's energy towards the cause of fighting racism and systems of oppression. I would like to speak to what this could mean for me as a teacher and a Black woman. I, like many of my colleagues, have invested my heart and soul into work with the Revere Public Schools. It has been a true joy to teach here, and I look forward to teaching here for many more years to come. Despite all of the fulfillment teaching in Revere has brought me, it has not and will not always be joyous. Despite the best intentions and hard work on behalf of my colleagues and administrators, there are gaps in our policies and practices that make teaching here as a woman of color challenging. And I can only imagine how difficult it must be for students if I, as the trusted adult in the room, feel the system working against me. If we are to commit to being anti-racist throughout the district and in partnership with City Hall and other public servants in our city, we must also take a hard look at our policies and procedures and how the very systems we uphold oppress our students of color and their families. Teacher voice is critical in the success of such an endeavor, more specifically, the voices of teachers of color. The unique lens through which we experience race as educators, both personally and professionally, will provide the necessary input for this work to be successful. Teachers know because we see it every day in the faces of our students and the relationships we work so hard to build. I think back to my own experience in school as one of a handful of Black students in my predominantly white town and how that has shaped me as an individual and how it influences my teaching practice. If there had been an equity advisory board when I was growing up, I can only imagine how many instances of racial injustice and trauma I could have been spared in school, and how many policies and district-wide choices could have changed that. In my life as an educator, I desire to spare as many of my students as possible from suffering the same injustices I did. Sadly, I cannot do that if they're coming through the same broken system as I did. This work will challenge us to our deepest roots and will require dedicated reflection and humility. It will take time and sustained effort to achieve the goals set forth by this proposed board, but I believe it to be absolutely necessary and time-sensitive work. School committee member D'Ambrosio's motion must be viewed not just as important, but as a critically actionable step in the fight towards racial justice and true reform. Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. Next, we have Megan Lease. Megan.
Hi, everybody.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Megan. No,
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Megan Lease. I live at 5 Baker Court in Dorchester. I'm an 8th grade science teacher at the SBA, and I want to speak to ongoing planning regarding reopening of schools. I want to start by saying that I understand how difficult it is for you to plan for the safe reopening of our schools, and I want to thank you all for your hard work so far and the incredible amount yet to come. Thank you so much. Before becoming a teacher, I worked with a pharmaceutical company that produced injectable medicines in a sterile environment. I oversaw operations and tested the air, water, surfaces, and personnel to verify the sterility necessary to make these products safe. If we made a mistake, the consequences were millions of dollars in lost profits and the lives of patients. I know how hard it is to fight for safety when there's so much on the line. But as we all know, this is something that we must do. While there's still a lot to learn about COVID-19, we know enough today to make this choice. We know that people of any age and any level of risk can contract the virus and that they can have lasting multi-organ complications. We know that 143,000 COVID patients in the United States have died. We know that students can transmit the virus, and thanks to a contact tracing study cited by the CDC, that children ages 10 and up can spread it as effectively as adults. Again, ages 10 and up can spread it as effectively as adults. We know that the virus can linger and remain viable in aerosols for up to 16 hours, as shown in recent studies. We know that aerosols are produced when we breathe, speak, cough, and laugh, and that they land on our bodies and surfaces and get reintroduced into the air when we move. We know that our HVAC systems will have to be inspected or replaced in order to remove contaminated aerosols from our buildings, rather than recycling them from room to room, spreading them to every student and teacher. We know that the number of cases in the country is not plateauing, and in fact, cases in Revere are increasing in the age group of 20 to 39 years old. Many of our teachers fall into this range. So this is an informed decision. It's not about our perception of what's risky and what's safe. It's about what we know to be true. There are many actions that must work in tandem to create safety. While they may make us feel better, simple social distancing, reducing class sizes, and mask wearing are not enough. They're a start, but they're not enough. Safer should not be confused with safe. I love my students, my coworkers, and my job. We all do. It's the best job in the world, and we take immense pride in it. Yet still, ongoing survey results show that the overwhelming majority of RPS teachers do not feel safe returning to school in person at this time. We want to return to our classrooms, but only when it's safe, and we're not there yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. So I'm going to go back. There was an email correspondence that we got that related to Mr. D'Ambrosio's motion, which I had held off in reading until he could actually join us in the meeting. So Anthony, I'm going to read that now, if it's okay, just so that I just want to keep your ears.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, this comes from Jamie Farrell, who lives at 67 Pearl Ave in Revere. And Jamie writes, the article in the Revere Journal that references this meeting is focused on committee member Anthony D'Ambrosio's motion to establish an equity advisory board. In the article, committee member D'Ambrosio describes the advisory board as being comprised of teachers, and there's a quote here, teachers, administrators, the school committee, and the superintendent, and the possibility of outside experts in their respective fields, end quote. While I support the establishment of an equity advisory board, I am concerned that the motion is, as described, does not mention the inclusion of participation of students and or parents, guardians. Even if included in a non-voting capacity, the participation of students and parents, guardians not only could provide the equity advisory board with valuable insights into the goings on within the schools, but also could serve as a trusted and effective conduit for information back to the community. Students, particularly at the high school level, have recently proven that they can be effective leaders in calling out and standing up against inequity in our community. And while quote unquote outside experts may be able to provide information, education, and best practices, surely the voices of students, the inside experts and their families are equally important. Therefore, I request that the school committee amend the motion to include representatives from the student body and a parent/family member representing at least one Revere Public School family on the proposed equity advisory board. If the motion was described correctly in the Revere Journal, I look forward to clarification.
Are we allowed to clarify now or no?
I don't think now, but I think that when we take up the motion, you would be able to speak on it then.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay. We have 4 more attendees with hands up. I'm gonna go to Barbara, which I hope is Barbara Wallace, who had emailed and said that she wanted to speak. And while she's coming on, I want to alert, oh, there's Michelle Murphy. Okay, I was gonna say. All right, go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. Hi, I'm Barbara Wallace, and I live at 34 Londonderry Road in Marblehead, Mass. I am an elementary educator at Garfield Elementary School. Thank you, school committee members, for holding this public speak time to hear voices of our community. I think everyone here wants to provide the best and most equitable education for all of the students in Revere Public Schools. A survey was sent out to RPS staff on July 9th regarding staff returning to school. I don't have the questionnaire in front of me, but from what I recall, it asked, do you anticipate returning to Revere Public Schools this coming school year, regardless of in-person or remote learning? The answer options were yes, no, yes, if I can teach remotely. In retrospect, I do not believe the results of this survey fully reflect educators' feelings about returning to school. School committee members. The RTA recently held reopening committees, and I participated in the safety committee. During this meeting, I found out that many educators felt that they could be penalized by answering the yes if they can only teach remotely option. Also, even though some educators wanted to check the yes if only they can work remotely option, they did not choose that option because they wanted to leave those spots open for their counterparts that may be at a higher risk of contracting the COVID virus. Educators voiced their concerns that they felt the only option they had was to check the return regardless of in-person or remote box because they felt they were asked to choose between their livelihood or their health. Personally, I answered yes regardless, but the next day research was published regarding how COVID is spread through the air. After reading and hearing about this new research, I would not feel safe in an enclosed environment where windows are not working and our air conditioning system may not be COVID safe. Reopening plans issues are front and center in districts throughout the United States and the world. I urge you to prioritize the safety of and health of students, families, educators, and the community when finalizing reopening plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Next is Michelle Murphy. Give me 1 second. Oh, I just saw her. Oh. Did Michelle log off? Oh, there she is. Hold on. Michelle, are you there?
I am. Here we go. So
Thank you.
it froze for a minute.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Michelle Murphy. I live at 76 Bancroft Road in Melrose, and proud to be a Revere educator. I want to sort of piggyback on what Barbara said. We were earlier this week given a survey by the RTA that asked us specific detailed questions about returning to school. These specific questions cut to the core of teachers' sentiments. For example, when asked right now if you feel safe returning to teach in your building, 80% of the teachers responded no. When asked if teachers would be comfortable returning if essential health and safety standards had not or could not be addressed, 88% said no. This, in fact, was in contrast to the district survey with just one non-specific question asking, will you come back?
Thank you, Michelle. I'm not sure if she got disconnected or, let me see. The next person is Olga Takori.
Yes, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Olga.
Yes. My name is Olga Takori. I live at 83 Glendale Street, Revere, Massachusetts, and I'm here to speak in first in favor of the Equity Advisory Board that it's been proposed today. I think it's very important. I think it's much needed more than ever, and I do wanted to piggyback, and I agree with someone else that asked in the proposed or the description, there's not including parents and students, and I do feel strongly that parents and students are the ones who bring the reality check of those issues that we need to address. So, but maybe on that language it is included when it says you know, appointments, so it could be parents and students, but I do really want to support this initiative. And I also wanted to say something about hiring another superintendent, assistant superintendent. I think really it's important. I'm not saying like that's not valid, but at this point, I think it's only one piece of a puzzle and it's not a priority, while there's other priorities to fill, you know, the big gap, to fill the big gaps that we have in the district. So I think it's not the time to hire one, and that I'm not saying that against it. Spending a lot of money, over 160,000 per year, where it can be invested in others, like could really address the root cause of inequity that and that brings so many other issues. And if you do vote today, because that's up to you, I guess, if you do vote and win that, then it has to be a person of color. We need more people of color at the administration level at school. I think you have been listening students in their meetings and how they voice out their concerns and how beneficial could be having a teacher of color, having someone that they're related to. And I can say that same thing goes to parents when we find someone like us. And I'm not saying that the rest is mean and it's bad people. It's just like the nature that finding someone that represent the demographic of the school, I think it brings a lot, and it's beneficial to students, and it makes the district a much better place. So, and with that, I will jump off and to say about the return to the school. I am a concerned parent, and I'm speaking about the older kids. I know the small kids are very engaged, very excited about Zoom meetings, but, and I know it's not in your, to say what is best, and no, you're trying your best you can, but I am concerned whether if they go to school a full time or a week on and off, is the school equipped with everything to support the teachers? Because I just can't imagine a teacher doing both jobs, keeping the kids and themselves safe and teaching at the same time. Can they both? Can they do both jobs? Are they protected? Are they have the staff capacity, like a helper in the classroom, knowing that each class holds sometimes over 30 students. So, and at the same time, if we do remote learning, are we all prepared to engage, especially the older kids who lack of motivation, like not seeing their peers, like their miss going to the classroom? So that's and my only concern, and I will be like to be part, and thank you so much for allowing us to participate in these platforms. We're really, I really thank you all.
Thank you, Olga.
Thank you, Olga. Just with Dr. Kelly, quickly before we move on, or before we get to the next speaker, I do want to remind folks that we're asking everyone to adhere to 3 minutes. I think there may be two more people to speak. We've given a lot of leeway to the speakers tonight. I guess technically we're allowed to only give 15 minutes of public speak or public comment, and we've gone well over that. And I hope everyone appreciates that. But I think we have two more people with their hands raised. After that, we'll shut down the public speak portion of tonight's meeting.
Okay. The next speaker is Noelle McDonald.
Hi, everyone. My name is Noelle McDonald. I live at 112 Larkin Street in Revere. I'm here to voice my support for Anthony D'Ambrosio's motion to create an equity advisory board. Just for some background, I graduated second in my class from Revere High in 2014. I'm still living in Revere, like I said, and I now work in academic publishing nearby. As a former student who has benefited and I think continues to benefit from this school system, I know this committee does value diversity, equity, and inclusion. We wouldn't be a successful district if that wasn't the case. But I think these past few months have really brought into focus an immediate need for real structural change. I think having a representative body dedicated exclusively to examining and improving equity addresses this need and can help establish Revere as a leader among our surrounding cities. With educators, administrators, and external community members engaged in regular conversation, equity will remain an ongoing discussion through this movement and beyond, and recommendations can be adjusted as our needs change and evolve. In my own work experience, I've seen equity initiatives put forward as additional tasks, with most of the labor falling in the laps of those who have already been historically marginalized. but the creation of this type of advisory board will show that this isn't extra work, it is the work, and it needs to be built directly into our systems. Organizing an official dynamic group that brings together the varied experiences and expertise of our educational and community leaders shows a continued commitment to equity from the ground up. I know I can't speak to educational policy. I can only speak as a resident who cares very deeply about this community, its teachers, and its students. I owe my higher education and current career to the foundational education I received in Revere Public Schools. And I believe that establishing a representative equity advisory board at this pivotal moment is a crucial step toward ensuring equitable opportunities for our students and faculty to pursue their own paths without any additional obstacles. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. And our next speaker is Rebecca Wood.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. My name's Rebecca Wood. I would prefer not to give my address publicly. My daughter is going into second grade at Garfield, and I wanted to speak about the ongoing planning of the reopening of schools. I fully support the MTA's plan and not opening schools until it is safe. I'm immunocompromised, and so I have concerns over her bringing it back to me or me picking it up in the taking her to and from school. Additionally, having said that, I also want to point out the challenges of remote learning for a child like Charlie. I'm a single parent. I go to work and I take care of her. There's not time for me to sit down with her and do her lessons. So that needs to be kept in mind when the remote learning planning is happening, is that a lot of kids don't have that extra adult in the house and are not self-motivated to do the learning on their own. Also, this is my device. I have one device and I use it for work. She doesn't have access to online stuff, and I can't afford to run out and buy her something. So that's another concern I have. And I just wanted to point out these problems that will pop up when and if we do remote learning. And also, I just wanted to, in the last bit, say that I fully support the motion to create an equity advisory board. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Dr. Kelly, I believe that is it for the people that have had their hand up.
You are correct.
Great. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Kelly.
Thank you. So I'm gonna bring up, I hope, all right. Stacy Mulligan. Actually, let me see if I can. I'm going to promote her to a panelist. Give me 1 second here for a minute. Stacy, can you check that your video works?
Sure. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
I'm trying to do this on the phone. Can you see me? Can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. So I'm just gonna read a brief statement with which Stacy has already heard, but you know, it's the same statement that I sent out to all of our staff announcing her appointment as principal of Seacoast High School. We are incredibly excited to bring Dr. Mulligan on board. She has over 20 years of experience in education in districts like Boston, Chelsea, and Medford. She joins us from her most recent position as assistant principal and director of diversity in the Medford Public Schools. And, you know, there were many reasons that we knew Dr. Mulligan was going to be an excellent fit at Seacoast. But one of them was that we knew we were bringing on a person who was really going to be an asset to the entire district as we do our work around equity and diversity. Prior to her work in administration, Dr. Mulligan was a high school humanities teacher. She specialized in project-based and standards-based instruction, which we all know are other pieces of work that we're highly focused on in Revere. She's done a good deal of work making community connections and helping students get placed in volunteer and internship positions, which is work that we hope to do at both of our high schools, but particularly at Seacoast. So we look forward to leveraging her expertise and in diversity as a district-wide asset, her extensive experiences with innovative teaching and learning practices, which she will work with the teachers at Seacoast to further develop for our students there. So I want to gladly welcome her to the Revere community and give her a couple of minutes to add to that and give the committee members a couple of minutes to welcome her as well. So Stacy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly. I just wanted to say thank you guys for having me tonight to speak. I'm very excited about my new position at Seacoast. I've only been there a short time, but I've definitely had a chance to meet a lot of people from the community. And like Dr. Kelly said, I always have had a huge interest in volunteerism and community service. So I'm looking forward to partnering with the community in all aspects. Even being on this school committee meeting tonight, I'm very excited to hear from the community. It's so refreshing to hear so many parents, teachers that want to be involved in this equity board. That's great. I hope that there is an amendment or an addendum that added to the equity board where students and parents are involved. I think that's a huge voice that we need in this mission to be an anti-racist district. So I'm super happy to be here. I have two boys myself. I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. They both have different challenges. My oldest is dyslexic and my youngest has ADHD. So I do understand the struggle of having a child that struggles with learning. I definitely want Seacoast to be a welcoming environment to all families. So I will work hard to make that a welcoming environment. I know my predecessor worked very hard to really bring the rigor up at Seacoast, and I will continue to do the same. But please reach out to me if you have any community service, any volunteer opportunities that you're interested in, or that you would like to partner with me. And I look forward to meeting you hopefully someday in person.
Mrs. Rizzo.
I just want to say welcome, Dr. Mulligan, and I'm glad you spell your first name correctly. I have to say, I've had a few of my colleagues over at the Medford School Committee called and not so happy that you've come over here, but then also has said we are very, very lucky to have someone like you. So I can't wait to meet with you. I see nothing but good things happening, not just at Seacoast, but for public school district as a whole with you in it. So welcome on board, and I hope you have a good time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Any other members? Ms. Tai.
Well, I'll be brief, but I'll just say I'm delighted. I love to hear what the superintendent had to say about you. I love to hear your answer, and I look forward to working with you at Seacoast. I live right here in Beachmont, and we in the Beachmont Improvement Committee will be contacting you because we are always looking for bodies for community projects. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tai. Any other members? Mr. Franti, and then Ms. Gravellisi.
Stacey, I just want to welcome you to our family. We want to wish you nothing but the best, and anything that we can do to help you, please call us, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
I'll be brief as well. I just want to welcome you to our school community. We're so lucky and happy to have you with us, and we all look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Any other members? No.
Ryan.
Mr. Sinella.
Hello.
I'm here.
Right. No, I too would like to welcome you as a former teacher and a former administrator. And I feel that you're going to be the right person in the right place. We wish you the best of luck. Anything we can do, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Sinella. Dr. Mulligan, welcome to Revere. We look forward to meeting you in person. And I too have heard some great things about you from the folks over in Medford. And we will definitely take you up on the community service offer that you've given. There's plenty of good work being done in the city of Revere, and we look forward to being a great partner.
Mr. Mayor, would you mind if I just welcome Dr. Mulligan as well?
Sorry, Mr. D'Ambrosio.
It's difficult because my video isn't working, but Dr. Mulligan, I look so much forward to working with you. I will reach out soon so that we can have a chance to chat. So impressed by everything that you've done, and I really look forward to the future.
Thank you.
Okay. So Stacy, you're welcome to stay in the meeting if you want. I'm going to move you back to an attendee. If you have other things on your agenda for tonight, feel free to pursue those instead. But thank you very much for being here. We're really excited and really just wanted to welcome you into the community.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly.
All right. So now I am going to bring up Mrs. Heather Bobb, who is the new principal of the Ramimash Academy. And just to give you a little bit of information on Ms. Bobb, she is a 1994 graduate of Revere High School. In the years since she left us, her experiences in education include teaching English language learner students and helping colleagues refine their teaching practices as an ESL coach in Lynn. Most recently, she was an assistant principal at Everett High School. She focuses on student-centered learning and distributed leadership, and her ability to read, write, and speak Spanish fluently will enable closer bonds among members of the Ramimash Academy community. It is a gift to the Revere Public Schools to have a former student return with educational experiences like this that are really aligned to our district needs and are going to help us serve the needs of our students. So, welcome, Heather, and I invite you to say a few words to the committee, maybe tell them a little bit more about yourself, and then invite the committee to speak to you as well.
Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely been a very exciting homecoming. All of my primary and secondary education was at the old, now gone, Paul Revere School, K-8, and then Revere High School. And I feel really fortunate to have had what I consider some of the all-stars for Revere Public Schools, including Miss Ty as my sophomore honors English teacher, Dr. Dakin, Joanne McKenna, some of the real names that come to mind when you think about what has built the Revere Public Schools to what it is now. So I'm very excited to be here. I consider the bulk of my work to be as a teacher. Even as a coach and an assistant principal and a department head, I always think of myself first as a teacher, and I think it really helps inform my practice. I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of the families as we were brainstorming ways to give the 8th graders their yearbooks and their t-shirts. And I think a lot of parents are relieved that I do speak Spanish and understand them when we when we communicate. So it's been really great to sort of meet people, listen to the needs of the community, and think about how we're going to make school as safe as possible, not only with COVID, but with this crisis of systemic racism, which is everywhere. I think it's, when we think about safety, it's really important to think of the whole student. And so most of my work has been in that regard. I've worked with newcomers, I've taught math, English, and again, the instructional coaching. I would say being a mom of 3 now grown children, my youngest is off to Mass Art in September. What informs my practice about being their mother is that although they ate the same diet and had the exact same upbringing, they are such unique individuals and learners, and I bring that with me all the time. I think it's really important to withhold any kind of judgment as to what a student brings, and understanding that strengths and areas of growth fluctuate and change. and just sort of riding along and meeting the students at the level above where they are and interfacing with families is going to be a real fun and exciting time for me here in Revere.
Great. Any members? Ms. Ty? Oh, Ms. Ty, you gotta unmute.
Okay. Sorry, Heather, welcome back. I think your hair is a lot longer than it used to be in 1994. But you still have that same little girl face, that enthusiasm that you showed when you came to class, and all of the wonderful work that you did. And I'm so happy that you're now coming back to your roots and going to give back to the community.
Thank you so much.
It's a wonderful thing.
You made my vocabulary so sophisticated for a high school student from Revere. Some of the words that come out of my mouth now, I still picture your face when I say that. So thank you for that.
You weren't happy about it then, probably, but now you are. Well, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Mr. Franti?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heather, I just want to welcome you to our system. I want to wish you nothing but the best. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, please pick up the phone and call us. We're here to help you and looking forward to meeting you in person someday.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Franti. Mrs. Rizzo?
Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming on board. I am a former Everett High School student that I am now a proud family member in the Revere schools, and I'm so glad to have you come on board. I'm sure you'll be a great asset, and you already know the community for the most part, so you have a head start, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Mrs. Garrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heather, I just want to welcome you. Welcome back to Revere. We're always happy to see when our students return back here and want to be part of our school community again. It makes us proud all the time. And, you know, I do look forward to meeting you soon in person, hopefully.
Thank you. Same here.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heather, I too would like to take the opportunity to welcome you. And as I said before, as a former teacher and a former administrator in Revere, it's so nice to have you return to us. It seems that we groom people and they go elsewhere, so it's comforting to have you with us.
Thank you.
And we have Mr. D'Ambrosio on video now.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you so much. I would like to sincerely welcome you back. I can't wait to work with you. I will also be reaching out to you as well. It's gonna, hopefully we're gonna do some great things as a team. So thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Heather, welcome back to Revere. And as everyone said, you know, we are here to help support, and anything that we can do to help you with that. We are here and available, and we look forward to meeting you and seeing you in person.
Great. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Heather. And you know, as I said to Stacy, I'm going to move you back to participant, but feel free if you have other things that you need to do to go ahead and do those other things. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Welcome aboard. Okay. Yeah, so Anthony and I have been working out technology glitches throughout this this process, and thankfully we have it now.
Thank you.
The next item I want to address actually was inadvertently left off of the superintendent's agenda, and that is the parent engagement group. And you heard Gina Garrow speak about the work that team has been doing for about, well, it would have been 2 years this year. And I have to thank Dr. Garcia, who took leadership of that role late last fall, and really worked with the committee and with the different team members to move that work forward. The committees are made up of a number of staff members from the district who also happen to be parents of students. Some of them are administrators, some of them are teachers, some of them are paraprofessionals. Mrs. Rizzo worked with the group closely and gave some input there. And other members are parents from throughout the Revere community. So I think they've done some pretty incredible work. They've worked very hard over the last year and a half, but I'll let Dr. Garcia talk more about that. And I think that Lorenzo, I think that I made you a co-host. You should be able to share the document that you wanted to share. And then if you want to say a name to me, then I can activate the people who are going to speak to each of the items as you go through them, and just don't forget to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all doing well. I just want to say a few words. I have been working with this group. It's a fantastic group, very enthusiastic group. And when I think about this group, I really think about the group that was willing really to put something together for the improvement of the district and also for the improvement of the community. It's a highly engaging group. I cannot say enough. The group is comprised of community organizers, parents, businessmen, teachers, administrators, school committee member. I know that Stacy Rizzo was part of this group. I think so. They brought a valuable contribution to the whole process. So in developing the policy, we want to make sure that we included in, several themes that Revere really appreciates and the community really appreciates. For example, inclusion was part of it. Diversity was part of it. It's another theme. Rigor, equity, leadership for transformation was part of it. Involvement, valuing people's perspectives and experiences was part of it as well. Decision-making, making sure that decisions are shared, not made by one person or a group of individuals, but it's shared with parents. Partnership was part of it. The developing the whole child was also part of this. Student safety was also part of this. So all these themes made it into the policy to make sure that, we did not forget any aspect that really the Revere Public Schools and the Revere community really appreciate, particularly during this time that many school districts are looking for increased parental involvement, increased family engagement, and increase the participation on all stakeholders, and for real, leadership transformation, real transformation to address many of the equities and many of the, systemic racism and other things that are really plaguing or affecting our system and our community, our society in general. So in developing this policy, we have 6 people who are going to present. There are 6 fundamentals for the policy. The first fundamental is the welcoming all people. The second fundamental is communicating effectively. The third one is supporting success of all children and youth. The fourth is advocating for each youth and child. The fifth is to sharing power and responsibility. And the last fundamental is partnering with the community. Those are critical aspects of the policy. And we have 6 presenters who are going to talk about each aspect of the policy. And I will be certainly introduce the introduction piece of the policy. I will share the document that came, in my view, it's a solid document because certainly it reflects the perspectives and the ideas of the parents who participated in the creation of this document. Okay. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to read the introduction piece. The city of Revere prides itself on its vibrant racial, cultural, and linguistic diverse community. As such, its public schools are committed to providing high-quality education to all students within a safe, inclusive, equitable, and supportive learning environment that views and treats learners as individuals and focuses on the learning success of each student. This commitment requires purpose-driven leadership for sustainable education that is rooted in a conscious and deliberate effort on the part of all stakeholders, including school leaders, educators, elected officials, and community leaders, to build strong engagement with families that relies on strategic collaboration and partnership to support the social, emotional, and academic growth of students in our community. As an urban school district, we believe that family-school partnerships are shared responsibilities and that all invested parties benefit when schools and families work together as partners towards promoting positive development and academic competencies of our diverse learners. We view family support for our students and schools as an essential component to student success as they grow and make progress through the learning cycle process. Hence, involving families in schools while expressing respect and appreciation for the rich experiences and perspectives to decision-making are vital to the education of our students. The family engagement policy fundamentals delineated below provide a comprehensive framework for our work with families as we continue our journey together to educate the whole child in Revere Public Schools. So this is the introduction to the policy. And I don't know if you have any questions, or we can wait until the end until everyone speaks, and then I'll open it to question and answers.
I'm going to suggest that I know that the parents and the folks who are members of the committee have been waiting a very long time. We're almost an hour and a half into the meeting. So I'm going to just suggest that we let them do their presentation, Dr. Garcia, if that's okay, and ask the committee members to please hold their questions until the end.
That's okay. So the first person is Olga Takori. Olga is going to introduce the welcoming all people piece. That piece to the policy will be introduced by Olga. Olga.
Olga, you should be able to speak at this point.
Yes, I wasn't able, but now I am.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to add, I know we're short in time, but I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work of this group of parents that we started 2.5 years ago. A group of parents volunteering at first with the support of this local organization, Women Encouraging Empowerment. Their fierce approach the mayor to present this initiative, and they were working for the last 2.5 years so hard, rain or shine, snow or cold, hot. They're meeting every week to work in this policy, and I just don't want to forget about them. I know we are all invisible in this meeting, but I just wanted to mention that Catherine Osina, Gladys Cordon, Gladys Olivares, Natividad Hernandez, Blanca Bedoya, Rachida, Maria, Casey, who are not speaking today, and I wanted to acknowledge that, and I wanted to appreciate that. With that said,
Olga, if I can for 1 second, you should be able to turn your camera on if you want to try to do that.
I do. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how I was. Okay. And I didn't have that option before. So
right.
Thank
I
you
gave
so
you different privilege this time.
Thank you so much. But thank you. I just wanted to bring that up, that this is a group of parents that took the initiative, and recently, a few months, we were able to form this committee, these subgroups with school committee members and administrators. So with that said, I will go and probably read, not just to take so much time. Can you scroll up? Okay. So the welcoming of people, and then you guys can ask questions. Promote a safe, inclusive, respectful and equitable school climate for all, regardless. Oh, I can't see this. Okay, I'm gonna read from this. Regardless of one's culture, race, ethnicity, language, sexual orientation, disabilities, and beliefs. Develop positive school parents relationships that view parents' cultural capital as an asset to the advocacy work of supporting their children's success in schools. Provide opportunities for parents to volunteer in schools, to have a voice in school decisions, and to be treated as equal partners in their children's education. Provide opportunities for parents to access resources and support networking. Promote a culturally responsive environment in the school that is supportive of and sensitive to the needs of our culturally and linguistically diverse families. Inform parents of their legal rights to translations and interpretations, services, and programs. Foster a school culture that centers on increasing parents' understanding of school structures, culture, policies, and practices so that they can make informed decisions.
Thank you, Olga. And the second presenter is Juan Carlos. Juan Carlos is going to present on communicating effectively with parents.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, Juan Carlos, you should be able to project your voice and your video, audio and video.
Is Juan Carlos there?
I don't know if he might have stepped away. His video and his audio are turned off. Let's just give him a second. We know how.
I'm here.
Oh, there he is.
All right. All right, so I'm going to time myself. I know I have only 3 minutes. Thanks, everyone. I want to also thank Dr. Kelly and Dr. Garcia and Olga for inviting me to participate in this conversation. It was really interesting to hear parents wanted to be part of the system. They want to be part of the solution. And so I'd like to share with you what we talked about when we talked about communicating effectively. We feel that parents have to learn and have to be informed about their responsibilities, but we also want to balance it with knowing their rights. And so some of the things that we have discussed was to develop and promote multiple communication paths with the schools and families. We want the parents to have a back and forth with the school system, not only a one-way street of communicating, but maybe utilizing social media and emails and whatever else we have at our disposal. We also like to survey families, students, and communities to identify barriers for family engagement. Sometimes technology gets on the way. We probably experienced through this time of COVID-19 where families weren't really acquainted with technology and they couldn't be of support to their children, for example. Welcome family into the buildings more frequently to increase access to and meeting times with administrator, teachers, and the student support services personnel. Encourage families to engage with their children in ways that are integrated with the overall curricula and extracurricular activities. Example, volunteering in schools. And when we talk about volunteering in schools, we're not only saying parents going and cleaning the schools, but having some meaningful interaction in the classroom, for example, and we could come up with some suggestion. Particularly in talking about cultural diversity and community showcase events, attending financial aid events, college admissions, informational nights like the one we had last year, and community forums, etc. Explore ways to build parents' knowledge and confidence in partnering with the schools. I think we have discussed having parents understand some of the dynamics of the school, and figuring out how to be of contribution and be partners in the, with teachers, for example. Post the school committee meetings, dates, minutes, reports, and the school events, so parents can have access to it. Recently, with COVID-19, Mayor approached the small businesses in Spanish, and we use a system on Zoom. So Zoom now has this interesting interpreting services, which we are suggesting the school system can use to have parents participating on, or at least listening in their own language, the school committees, and invite families to participate in policy and developing meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Our next presenter will be Claudia Sen. Claudia is going to present supporting success of children and youth. Claudia.
And Claudia, you should be able to turn on your video too if you want to. There she
Yes.
is. Okay.
Okay, got it. Hello, my name is Claudia Sen. So I live on Riviera. I have 2 kids, and yeah, I'm parents, and I'm PLO. So I'm just graduated to the PLTI to 2018. So I'm gonna talk into the fundamental number 3, supporting the success of children and youth. So it's, okay, point number 1 saying, work closely with families to increase their understanding of how student work can be aligned with learning standards to improve student college and career readiness. Okay, the second one is promote data sharing session for parents to increase their understanding of how to use standardized test results and other data to improve their child's learning. Promote family literacy nights to increase parents' knowledge of the importance of early.
Are you there, Claudia?
Yeah, go ahead, Doc.
I was just wondering if she's there or if she lost connection or something.
Assessment and data systems to ensure academic rigor and student engagement. Work closely with families and the community on identifying educational funding to support the social and emotional well-being for all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, for your presentation. The next presenter will be Farah Shahid. And Farah is going to, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, just please correct me. Farah is going to present on advocating for each youth and child.
And Farah, you'll want to unmute and if you want to share your video.
That's better. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to take up too much time. My name is Farah Sheikh. I am a parent. I have 2 children that go to Revere Elementary School and high school. Sorry, middle school now. And a parent leader advocate, and I work with the Revere City. So today I will be presenting advocating for each youth and child. We work closely with families to increase their understanding of the school system and their rights and responsibilities under state and federal laws, to empower families with skills and knowledge to be strong advocates of their children's education via advocacy and civic engagement. Work closely with families to identify resources, funding, and services to ensure all students, regardless of their socioeconomic status or prior educational background, have equitable access, have to rich and rigorous learning experiences. sorry, my screen keeps freezing. Provide support to families during grade and or school transitions to increase shared decision-making, transparency, and common understanding of the process. Also like to share information regarding the 504 IEP, ELL proceedings, including identification and placement of students in special education and ELL programs, services with families. Capitalize on PTO, PAC, SIC, CPAC, ELPAC, PLTI, and family liaisons to enhance parents' advocacy and leadership skills so they can fully engage in their child's education. Sorry, guys, my screen kept on freezing.
You did great, Sarah.
You did well. Farah, thank you for your presentation. The next presenter will be Siham Sheikh. Again, if I mispronounce your name, please feel free to correct me. She's going to present on sharing power and responsibility. Siham, are you there?
Hello.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Siham Sharif, and I'm a parent for 2 kids in Bow River School. And today I'm gonna present sharing power and responsibilities. Develop effective parent engagement groups that represent all families in the city. Ensure that community members have a voice in decisions that affect their children. Provide training on family and community engagement for school personnel. Develop an outreach strategy to inform families, businesses, and the community about school and family involvement opportunities, policies, and programs. Ensure equitable representation of culturally and linguistically diverse parents in various school improvement communities and schools. Engage parents in the community in sub-community meeting of the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. The last fundamental of the policy is partnering with the community, and that will be delivered by Ina Tal. Ina?
Let me just bring her on here. Give me 1 second. Okay. You should be able to unmute and show you, there she is.
Yes.
Hi.
Good evening, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. My name is Ina Tal. I live right here in Riviere. I have a daughter in high school. And so I'm going to talk this evening about partnering with the community. So it's linked to community resources, partner with community groups to strengthen family and support student success, provide training on family and community engagement for school faculty, and work with families to turn the school into a hub of community life. If I just can add a little something, I'm just very excited to be here today because, as all of you know, it's been a long process, a long time in the making, but people coming from all different walks of life to be able to come together and put this document together for the benefit of all of us, not only administrators, students, parents, faculty. It's just beautiful. And I'm looking forward now with the action plans on how to bring this policy to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ina, for that presentation. That concludes the presentation for the reading, actually, of the fundamentals of the policy. I subscribe to Ina's idea and to everyone's idea. This certainly is a solid document, and people, parents, families really spend a lot of time putting it together. And we all understand the busy lives that you have, but at the same time, we also understand that you want to be part of the process. You want to be involved, and that's what matters here. And when schools and the community and parents work together, miracles can happen. And particularly in our school districts where, you know, we have a significant number, the majority is a minority in our school districts. And there is a need for a radical approach for us to really come up with a solid document that incorporates different views and perspectives of those we serve, the parents, the students, etc. So I'm very happy that, you know, you guys, you all have worked very hard to the materialization of this document. Now we open to questions.
Any members have any questions? Ms. Tai?
Well, just an observation. I think part of the reason we don't have any questions is that they have done such a thorough job of addressing every aspect of this policy and presenting it with enthusiasm. And I want to thank Dr. Garcia for his leadership and for all of those of you who have participated in it. It's a wonderful thing, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tai.
Any other members?
I think Mr. Franti has his hand up.
Ms. Franti, gotta unmute.
Diane, is it possible that we could have this sent to us, the policy?
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Garcia, the plan was to present it tonight and then send you all the copy. It will also be part of the packet for the school committee meeting. So for folks who are listening in at home, you will be able to access it through the packet that's posted on the city website.
Okay, thank you.
Is there, Dr. Kelly, are we expected to take a vote on this tonight, or?
It would be great if you took a vote approving this. If you'd like to do that, I don't know if I know the committee's usual stance is to
Send it to subcommittee.
policy subcommittee and let them look at it. I am noticing that Ina has her hand up, so I'm gonna. Did you want to say something, Ina? You can unmute yourself.
Yes, it's just that because, you know, Dr. Garcia is probably getting ready to send it. I just want to say that I made a mistake when I submitted the name of everyone. Siham's last name is not Siham Sheikh, it's Siham Sharif. So I'll just put it in the chat, you know, so that's all. And I apologize, Siham.
Great. Or I send Dr. Garcia an email. I don't think that the chat works in this format on Zoom.
Okay.
Send me an email, I will correct it accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rizzo?
So I want to let my committee members know, they definitely were hoping for a vote tonight, but if a copy didn't go to each person, I am going to suggest that it goes to the policy subcommittee like we would normally do. But I do want to let you know that with the Every Student Success Act, every Title I school district must develop a type of policy. So back in February, I was working on this policy. It would be KBA, School Family Relationships Goals. And then working with this group, I wanted to see where they were going. There's a lot of things that would be very important that we can incorporate in the KBA policy. So I held off on having any policy committee about it. They were doing tremendous amounts of work. So with the ESSA policy, it must, it describes the responsibility of all stakeholders to improve school student achievement and how parents will be involved in their child's education. So once a final policy comes up, then it would go to the individual schools to take action on it, on how it will fit with their schools. Each of our schools have different needs. but following any of the policy that we put forward, they would have to pinpoint what works for their schools individually. They've done a lot of work. I would like to see it to go to policy committee, seeing that no one got a copy of it prior. I was privy to it with all the drafts. There was a lot of drafts. And I would also try to make it a time that most of these people like Ina and Olga and them could attend and help out with that subcommittee. I mean, you're always invited anyhow, but I would, in this case, I would like to work closely with you.
Sure, we'll be happy. And we, like you said, we were hoping that today was approved because we have been waiting for 2.5 years, and I don't know what it took so long. And I just wanted to mention that we have developed this policy not only to sit there, but we also have a plan to put it in action. You know, we have a priority action steps to put this policy to work in the benefits of parents and students and the whole school district. So we were really hoping that you consider approve today, but
and like I said, you know, many times, Olga, I've said this, even though you've done a lot of work, it's up to those individual schools to do the action plan. Suggestions are always great because you've worked so hard. You've already thought about action plans, but those school councils for each school would have to come up with the action plans. And I think it would be imperative for any of your parents at those schools to maybe suggest those action plans that you've been working so diligently on.
Yes, Stacy, you are right. The intention is to engage the group of parents who are specifically from each school, because they know the needs, they know the challenges, they know what they have or what they don't have. So that's our intention, to be as supporters as we can to work with those individual groups of each school. Thank you, Stacy.
Exactly. Thank you, Olga and Ina and everyone. You've done a tremendous amount of work.
Yes.
Right,
Well,
I think Mrs. Cravalisi had her hand up.
I did, and I was going to add into the family engagement group, but Ms. Rizzo had beat me to it, that, you know, if referred to policy committee, because we just saw the document tonight, that it is an open meeting, it is posted, and we encourage, you know, everyone to participate so that we can discuss it together. I know Ms. Rizzo was on the family engagement group with everyone. And like I said, you know, we have not seen it until today, so I'd like to read it and, you know, discuss it with you and, you know, go over it with everyone together, and that would be public and it would be live streamed so everyone would participate.
So Dave, do you want to make that motion, or?
Can I just ask a question about the process? Like, if we're not making a decision today, is it, you know, do you push it to the next meeting, or, you know, how long do we expect? We're hoping to see this implemented in September, and I don't know if it's realistic, but if you can give us a time frame, or, you know, what is the process after today, that would be wonderful.
So if it's referred to a subcommittee.
Yeah, we don't even have a motion yet.
Then the subcommittee would take that up. And then it would be, the subcommittee would make a recommendation to the committee of the whole at their next school committee meeting in August. And so, you know, just to be perfectly transparent, I don't know what is going to happen in August or September. I don't think that any of us do. We're working very hard to try to put a plan together that brings our kids back at least part-time. But I think there's just so much ambiguity about what next year is going to look like and what the day-to-day is going to look like, that I just want to highlight that so that we're all, you know, focused on it's just going to be a strange world for us come next school year. And I know that our focus as a district is going to be on making sure that we're doing what is right to keep kids and keep staff safe. And that's going to be our number one major priority.
Yes,
So,
and I agree with that. Thank you.
okay.
Okay, Mr. Franti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to send the family engagement letter to the policy subcommittee at the discretion of the chairman of the committee and the people that spoke on it tonight.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Roll call.
Dr. Garcia, can you call the roll? Dr. Mokaba had to leave.
Mr. Stacy Bronson Rizzo,
Yes.
Mr. Anthony D'Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Michael Ferranti,
Yes.
Miss Susan Bravellisi,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick Sanella,
Yes.
Miss Carol Tai,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Arrigo.
Yes. Okay, so the motion's approved. That will move on to the policy subcommittee, and I'm sure that the policy subcommittee will schedule a meeting in the near future and to discuss this further.
And Dr. Garcia will make sure that everybody on the parent engagement committee gets an invitation to that meeting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And I will definitely try to form something within, by next week. So I just need to see who has some dates available, availability, and then I'll get back to everyone so that we can get it done sooner rather than later.
Great.
Thank you.
So,
Ina, I'm looking at your face and I feel so bad because you were so gung-ho on getting this all tonight, and I'm sorry. It's not a disappointment because you've done the work, you're working hard for all these students and families, and it will get done. You know, maybe not in the time frame we all hoped, but please don't be disappointed.
No, I'm not disappointed.
Okay.
And I know you put that, so, you know, we trust you to push this because, you know, you were representing everybody. So I hope this was in line with what the school wanted, plus what the parents wanted. So it was a, collective effort. And, I hope it, it comes to volition. Thank you.
so for the parent participants, I'm going to move you back to attendees. So you won't be able to share your video and your audio anymore, but of course can stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to. Okay, so we should have just the committee and the superintendent on here now. All right. The next item on the superintendent's report is the re-entry plan and progress timeline, as well as results of the staff survey, staff and family surveys. So I'm going to actually kind of do those together, and I have I'm going to share my screen to show a PowerPoint that we put together on this, I hope. Can everybody see that PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
And so I'll take us through the data. I do want to acknowledge that Barbara in the public comment period had mentioned, Barbara Wallace, who was the Garfield Elementary teacher and one of the an officer in the Revere Teachers Association, had mentioned that the teachers thought that our data is skewed. I don't know if that's the case. One thing that we did say in the beginning of the survey was that this was a preliminary data gathering piece, and it was just informational, and nobody was committed to the decisions that they gave us. We know that this is a very fluid situation. I think that I've used that word probably far too many times since March, but we know that this is changing daily, and we recognize that teachers' plans might change and our plans might change as we move forward through the pandemic and get guidance from our medical professionals and our elected officials. So I do want to acknowledge that. But we're going to start with our family responses, the responses from families to our family data And one thing that we did that was, I think, a little bit different than other districts was we asked parents to give us a response for each child. And we wanted to recognize that they might have a third grade student who's in a very different situation than an eighth grade student who might have some underlying medical conditions or have other reasons. And we wanted to acknowledge that different kids have different needs. And so we asked them to respond to the survey for each one of their students. We did offer the survey in 4 languages, and you can see here the number of responses that we got in each one of those languages. It's a, you know, speaking statistically, having a 41% response rate is pretty high. One thing that we are going to do, and we put the same disclaimer on the family survey as we did on the teacher survey, which was, this is not an absolute commitment to how you respond to the survey. We know that things might change, but we needed to get an idea of where people were so that we could move forward in our planning process. And so that's what we did. And in the results of the survey, I wanted to show you this. We did ask them for each child to indicate what school they went to. And you can see that there's a good representation from across all schools based on enrollment. Of course, the highest response rate was for the high school at 752, which is expected because that's where we have our highest enrollment. And you'll see that trend continue around. The one place that we were surprised by the particularly low involvement was at the Garfield Elementary, but the other numbers are relatively representative of the enrollment in that school. The grade level responses were also relatively predictable, fairly even across each grade level. There was a little bit of a peak at the 7th grade, not exactly sure why, but it's not hugely different than the 6th grade and the 8th grade. We had a low response from our pre-K and not yet enrolled kids, which makes sense because they don't quite have a relationship with us yet. But 83% of parents, I should say, that families of 83% of the students for whom there was a response provided indicated that they do want to come back to school in the fall in some way, shape, or form. 17% indicated that they did not. And we tried to dig into that response a little bit more deeply, and we asked 3 questions. The first was, what if we came back full time? And you can see there are 4 response options. One was, this does not work for us at all. One said it's not preferred, but we could do it. Somewhat preferred and most preferred. And we tried to focus in the 3 different kind of responses. I'll show you the other 2 in just a minute, on how many people this option was a somewhat preferred or a most preferred option. And in this case, a full return to school fell into those 2 categories for 2,193 students. We asked the same question about a hybrid, and specifically we named a hybrid model where the kids did 1 week in person and the next week as remote learning. And there was a higher percentage that selected this as a somewhat preferred model, and higher overall number, not statistically significant, but higher nonetheless, of kids for whom their parents said somewhat preferred or most preferred fell into this category. And then the last one we asked was for full remote learning, so no in-person return. And right now, there were 1,500 parents who said that this would be somewhat or most preferred option. Significantly, we had the highest number of parents tell us that this does not work for them at all. And it was almost double what the next nearest statistic was, not quite double, but approaching there. So the responses are varied, but overall, it seems like a hybrid model is one that parents are most comfortable with at the time that this data was collected. And again, I'll reemphasize that could change as the pandemic progresses and we learn more. We asked parents to give us some initial information on how they felt about their needs for transportation. And 51% said that they would provide transportation themselves. 20% the kids would walk or bike to school, which is great. Would like to see that number go up actually. 18% said that they would like school bus transportation or school provided transportation, and 11% were unsure at this time. So that's helpful for us in planning our transportation costs and needs. One idea that we had been talking about was how we would facilitate teacher collaboration and planning during this time. And it's become abundantly clear to us that teachers would need a significant amount of time in order to manage both the in-person learning and the at-home learning for the kids that are in the remote week of their hybrid model, and for kids that are working fully remote. So one of the questions that we wanted to ask parents about, just so that we could collect some data, is if we did an abbreviated day so that students were released around 1 o'clock instead of 2:30, how would that work for their families? Would they be able to accommodate that? And 62% of families said they could, 24% maybe, and for 14% it was a definite no. So it just gives us some information that we can work with that will give us a little bit of flexibility and give the planning teams a little more flexibility on how they make decisions about our return to school in the fall. And then we asked questions about internet access and whether or not families thought they would need help from us to acquire internet access in the fall. And you can see the results here. Very few of our families reported that they do not have internet at home. And slightly more said that they would need assistance from us to acquire an effective internet connection. And I think the difference between the two revolves around what we talked about at our last school committee meeting around the current programs that Verizon and Comcast and others are allowing free service. And when that ends, more families might need support from us, hence the hotspot discussion that we had last time. And finally, we just wanted to collect some preliminary data on our spring model of remote learning. And so 1/3 of the parents said that they were very satisfied with that. Half of the parents felt like more support was needed. And 17% that this just was not the model for them at all. And so this helps us look at ways that we can build a stronger model for the remote pieces of learning that we might need to do in the fall and going forward. So actually, I'm going to pause there and just see if there are any questions from the committee on the feedback from parents.
Any questions from any members?
Brian?
Mr. Sinella.
Diane, have you a guesstimate of the cost factoring, whether it's entirely at school, hybrid, or home? I mean, in school aspect of it, transportation is going to be a big number to have to produce, even though right now over 60, whatever it was, % said that they'll drive them. First rainstorm, the first snowstorm, you know, they're going to be looking for rides. Have you looked at any amount of cost factoring for the 3 separate programs?
We've started to look at all of them, Fred, and honestly, it's going to be easier to do that once we have our reopening plans, and we do have to produce them for all 3 scenarios. Once we have those in place, we'll know better. One of the pieces that I'm going to get at later in this presentation is we do have a committee on transportation that is looking at all of the different pieces. And we have a fairly structured budget set for transportation. As you know, we use some of our CARES Act funding or the ESSER grant funding to augment our budget. But the committee is talking about if there's not enough money there, how can we restructure our transportation services in order to meet our budgetary needs? Because we can't just say that we're going to do everything that under the sun that would be helpful in this situation. We have to be reasonable about what the costs are going to be. So I will be talking a little bit more about the preliminary conversations that the Transportation Committee is having around those pieces. But that's why we're collecting this data. All of the teams have this data already, and they've used this information to inform the work that they're doing and do some projections from there.
I think my concern is also if we start school for everybody and a month into it, whatever, we have to go back as we are now. Are we committed to the transportation where we're going to have to renegotiate and still pay 75% for services not rendered? I mean, that's going to be a big nut to crack.
Yeah, and one of the things that we have, we don't have it scheduled yet, but we are planning one when we want to wait till we were a little bit further through our planning process, is a conversation with the Haley Bus Company, who is our primary transportation provider, and meet with them and actually talk about these things and come to some agreements on what different pieces will look like in the different phases of, if we are fully remote, how that changes the contract. And even if it does come to be the case that a lot of our parents don't want transportation because they're concerned about the risk it might pose to students being on a bus, then we want to actually be able to talk about that too. Right now, we're under contract with them. We are in the second year of a 3-year contract. So we'll need to work with the mayor's office and our legal counsel, the mayor's legal counsel, to talk about whether or not there are opportunities, perhaps through a force majeure, that would allow us to renegotiate that contract.
Well, the other thing, Diane, is that your transportation committee, I'd like to have information forwarded to the school committee's transportation committee so we can have an idea of what's going on.
Absolutely. They're working on their plans now, and I'm going to share a timeline for the plans in a few minutes, but we can certainly get all of that information to all of you to review before any decision is made. And you'll all be voting on the plan before it's finalized as well.
All right, thank you.
Any other members have any questions or comments?
I do.
Oh, Ms. Ty.
Diane, do you have any idea or any plan at all to conduct another survey? Because, I mean, the numbers of this, you know, seem to be much lower than we might need to have a really good idea of what's happening. Also, in another week or two, I mean, the news out there is not good at all. And in another week or two, people might have a very different idea about whether they want their children to go back or not. Now, I realize that that's really pushing it. But I just was wondering if you had in the back of your mind at some point to trying another survey and trying to get additional numbers of families to participate.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And you know, one of the things that we know that we're going to need to do around the middle of August, that's when we're going to do it, probably around the week of August 10th. I'm looking at a calendar. We'll be sending another survey out to families and to staff, and people will need to commit to certain things.
Yeah.
At that point, they'll need to commit to, I'm coming back to school or I am not coming back to school. And one of the things I mentioned in our earlier meeting, that we're working with the 5-district partnership to have some continuity in our plan.
Right.
And one of the pieces that we've agreed to is that we're all going to have a 6-week waiting period for any family to change their mode of learning. So if a family elects to do remote learning initially, which I wouldn't be surprised if a number of parents in the best interest of their children said, we're going to do remote because we want to wait and see how this goes. We want to make sure that you have the right PPE. We want to make sure that other families aren't telling us that it's a problem in the schools. And then a week or two in, say, you know what, now we feel comfortable and we want to send our child. We're not going to be able to change gears that quickly with so much involved in this process. So we're going to need families to commit to the mode of learning that they're choosing for their child. And that commitment will last. We're still figuring out an exact timeline, but we were talking about 8 or 10 weeks. And then at the 10-week points, they can choose to change, but they would be committed to that change for the next 10-week period. You know,
that makes sense.
The same thing with transportation. If they say to us, I don't want to put my child on the bus, they're committing to not having transportation provided for their child. And for the academic school year, they're going to need to provide that transportation, to Mrs. Sinella's point, whether it's raining or snowing or beautiful weather. So we are going to come to the place around the middle of August, and the same will be true of teachers. We're going to need teachers at that point to make the best decision that they can for themselves. And hopefully we'll be able to accommodate the requests that everybody has and be able to meet the needs of students. If we can't, then we're going to have to make some difficult decisions on how we mitigate the difference between the requests of families and the requests of our staff members and how they want to work.
Right.
So there's all of that. And now, you know, Mr. Franti brought up at our last meeting, are we going to have to change the calendar for next year? And, and I said, you know, absolutely. And what we might be looking at
I think we will.
is maybe starting in a completely remote phase and then moving into a hybrid model if things become safe to do that. We're not sure at this point where we're going to land, which is why it's so important that our teams are working on all three models. What does it look like if we're fully remote? What does it look like if we have a hybrid? And what does it look like if we're fully in person? And also working in the understanding that at any point in time in this school year, we could have to pivot very quickly from one of those to another.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chai. Any, Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes, I have, well, first of all, me of all people who really is never positive, I have to say the news in Massachusetts are really good and I'd like to keep it that way. But I did get a text with a question from Ralph DeChico and what reasons why we might think the numbers of the survey are so low.
So I do want to make sure that we're not violating any public comment pieces of the school committee's protocol. But you mean the numbers are low for the families that we got?
For the, I'm sorry, for the survey.
I don't know. I actually thought that statistically speaking, I thought that 41% is a tremendous turnout for a survey, actually.
Question?
Mr. Franti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Diane, with the people that are putting the schedule together, if they looked at different dates of starting, you know, instead of starting September 2nd, are we going to start September 2nd? Or are we looking at moving dates to maybe push it back a little bit?
I think that they are, and you know, a lot of this depends on the guidance that we get from the commissioner. He has not given us information yet on whether or not the 180-day requirement or the 990-hour requirement is going to be modified in any way. I do know that the teachers want to work, have, as you had already granted permission for them to have the 4 extra school days that we do converted into professional development days. We're waiting to hear if there's going to be guidance from the state that we can add to that number of days. And we will need to work with the union on a memorandum of agreement. And I know that Mr. Sneller and Ms. Ty and I are going to be working with the school committee's labor council and with the union on that MOA that we'll have to look at. And that will come through those pieces. We have a preliminary meeting tomorrow with the union. And then, as I mentioned, the negotiation subcommittee with the RTA will be meeting on July 31st. And we'll be looking for subsequent dates after that in order to start those discussions. But that certainly will be one of the pieces that we'll be talking to the union about. And one of the questions we have, Michael, is do we do those teacher days earlier and still bring the kids back around September 2nd, I think is right now our official school start? Or do we start that professional development around September 2nd and delay the start of the student year? And I think that that decision is going to be dictated by where we are with COVID.
Which is a big unknown right now.
Yeah.
Big unknown. Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Okay, Dr. Kelly, you want to continue on?
Sure. So the next piece I'm going to share here is our staff survey. And we did send this to all employees, of which we have about 1,150. So we had a significantly higher response rate from our staff, which is to be expected. 478 of those were from classroom teachers. And that does not include guidance counselors, nurses, and other categories. We also had responses from all of them, but I wanted to give you an idea of the number of staff who responded. The question that we asked, and as I mentioned earlier, we did give folks a disclaimer and said, you know, we're not asking you to commit to this decision. And Gina Garrow did send me an email on the day that the survey went out and said, some people feel like they're going to be, if they make a decision here, they're going to be stuck with that decision. And I said, absolutely not, Gina. Please reinforce with them that no one is committed based on a decision that they give to the survey. It's just preliminary data so that we can have some information to move forward with our planning process. And as you can see here, almost 93% of the teachers said that they would come back no matter what. There were 60 teachers who said, I'll come back, but only if I can work remotely. And a very small number, just 4 teachers said, no, I am not coming back. And then here is the breakdown. The largest response rates that we got were from classroom teachers at 53%, paraprofessionals we got a large response from, and cafeteria workers we got a large response from. You know, this data isn't really all that significant because those are our largest groups of employees. So we would expect them to be the largest number of responses. But Dr. Gallucci actually coordinated the data on this piece, and he does have the breakdown by job role of how everybody responded. We did ask people a voluntary question. No one was required to respond to this, but we asked them if they wanted to, just to help us again with our planning and understand where staff might be in terms of being able to respond. 57 people chose to reply. And I should mention that this question went to those people who said that they're only going to come back if they can work remotely, or if they said that they're not going to come back. And you can take a look at the number of responses that each one had. And as I mentioned before, we will survey staff again and in a more committal way around the middle of August so that we know exactly who's planning to come back and who's not.
So Diane, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
You know, when the people who said that maybe have a choice that they will not come back to work, and I think the statement beside that on the previous slide was medical. Does that mean that, you know, that somebody would have to have a note from the doctor and to access their sick leave? Would that rule of the contract there apply? Or if someone just said, no, I'm afraid you know, my health is compromised. You know, I've had asthma all my life. And I suppose you could get a note from your doctor on that. But I mean, would we require a medical certification from a doctor and in order to collect sick leave? Or what if they don't have sick leave?
So it's a complicated question, Carol, because there are still parameters of the CARES Act that apply to employee leave, which are differentiated based on whether it's the employee who is sick with COVID or they are caring for somebody else. And there are different provisions through FMLA around folks who are at higher risk for COVID being able to access their sick time. And there's some pretty liberal relief for people to be able to access their sick time in order to take that if they are at risk for COVID. So there's a lot of work that we need to do in that area. Certainly if somebody is making a medical claim, we'll work through all of those different opportunities that they have. The key thing that we would like to do is find a way to engage them in a way that keeps them safe. Right. So one of the things that we've talked about is if we have staff members who are at risk for COVID, we would prioritize finding ways for them to work remotely with our students who are working remotely. It's a very iterative process, and we really, you know, when we have stronger numbers, we'll know exactly how many people are going to come back and how many will be available to do that remote work. And that's another place where the partnership with the 5 districts might be a leverage point for us, because if, for example, I'll give you a hyperbolic example. if every fourth grade teacher in the district said, I can't come back,
Yeah.
we still need to find a way to teach fourth grade, right? So
Right.
that's where we might be able to leverage partnerships in the 5 districts and be able to fill those gaps. We won't know if there are any trends. We don't anticipate any particular trends, but we won't know that until we have commitments from everybody on what
Yeah.
to do.
Right.
And even at that, we can look at things like one of the commitments that I would like to make, and I think that the school committee is on board with this, but we probably need to have more conversation around this, is what we're doing with our encore classes, like phys ed and art and music. You know,
Yes.
I think they're really critically important, especially to student social emotional health. And I know that there are a number of districts that are talking about discontinuing phys ed so that they can use their gyms
Use the gym.
as classrooms. And they're intending to repurpose their phys ed teachers into other instructional positions. I don't know. I'm hoping that we are still going to have a robust physical education program for our students, because I think it's critically important. And I would say the same thing about our art and music teachers. But if we come to a point that we don't have, I'll go back to the 4th grade example, enough teachers to teach 4th grade, that's someplace that we might want to consider.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. All right. So the next thing I wanted to do was talk about the progress of our reopening teams who are working currently on our reopening plan. And I mentioned some of this to you previously, but we do currently have 6 groups working. Mr. Coster, Dr. Porter, and Ms. Lupus are leading a team of teachers and parents and administrators and students on the teaching and learning pieces of our reopening plan. I'm going to go into some highlights for each section in just a minute. But I want to acknowledge the people who are leading each of these teams. Mrs. Bonarigo is working with our student support team. Mrs. Finn is leading the personnel and staffing team. Mr. Pierce is leading our special education and English learners team. Ms. Willett and Mr. Benson are leading our facilities and operations team. And Mrs. Flynn is leading our transportation team. The calendar that we have around our reopening plan is that tomorrow, by the end of the day, all 6 teams are going to submit their initial notes to their plan, to the plan writer. And that is the consultant that I mentioned in our earlier meeting, Barbara Kroc, who is not only making sure that our plan is cohesive across those 6 areas, but is also highlighting any commonalities between our plan and those of the other 4 districts in the 5DP. She's going to get that back to us by midnight on the 28th. And all of our teams have planned a subsequent meeting for the morning of July 29th. And the plan for that meeting is that the teams will review what is written in the plan and make sure that it's accurate and representative of their team discussions and the decisions that they made. Sorry, I didn't mean to click that. So we will make those, once the teams have done their error checking, we will send them to the committee for their review. We are also going to host a virtual town hall to share the plans with parents and staff. And we'll be sending information about this later this week with a link to a Zoom webinar similar to the one that we're on right now. And the structure of that meeting will be that each of the teams, the members of each team, will actually give a brief presentation, about 10 minutes each, on the decisions that they are recommending to the school committee and recommending to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for our reopening plan. We will also post the draft plan at that time, and it will be open for public comment to all members of the school community through the following, I have to look at the calendar, Tuesday, which is August 4th. And that gives me enough time to review the comments and talk to the committees and see if they want to make any adjustments. That work is going to be ongoing through August 5th and 6th. In the meantime, in the middle of that, I do have to on July 31st submit a preliminary plan to the Department of Education by their 5 o'clock deadline. And so I'll have that from right after our virtual town meeting. We won't have made edits yet at that time. But the document that the Department of Education has asked us to complete is really very preliminary. And so there's not a lot of detail required for this first deadline. But on August 5th and 6th, the teams will review the feedback that come from this open comment period that ends on August 4th. They'll revise their plans as they see fit and submit a final to the school committee for your review. And we had discussed at our last meeting the need for a August 10th meeting so that after you have that final review period, you can actually vote the plan before I submit the final plan to the Department of Education later on the 10th. And my hope is that you'll all be participating in the process and understanding what the plan is and hearing what the suggested changes are so that you won't be so far away from understanding of the plan at the time that you'll be able to take that vote on the morning of August 10th. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions on the timeline.
Any members have any questions?
Okay. I'm going to go on now and I'm going to share just brief bullets, and I'm not going to read all of these. There's quite a bit on each slide, so I just want to put them up here. As I mentioned, you will get these slides as part of your packet and you'll be able to review them then. But in terms of teaching and learning, one big piece of the team is talking about for K through 12 is making sure that we're considering opportunities for remote learning that does not involve technology. We really want to make sure that we're not developing a remote learning plan that only involves sitting behind a computer. So that's one of the pieces that the teams are thinking about across all grade levels. We really want to consider other ways to engage students in learning outside of the classroom that perhaps involves their natural environment or their home or their family or the community, pieces like that. At the elementary level, you can see some of the main pieces here. I want to highlight the one that the committee has identified, that feedback to students on their work is going to be really key. And in terms of structures, one of the things that you'll see as a trend throughout this is that we want to minimize student movement throughout buildings because that increases the risk of spread if anybody happens to be infected without our knowledge. And so one of the decisions that they've made at the elementary level is to have elective and encore teachers travel to the students instead of having the students always traveling to them. Yeah. So we'll have to think about how to make that work. At the middle school level, there's a lot here. Some of it we've talked about before. Some of it actually gives us an opportunity to push on some of the initiatives we've been working on for the last couple of years, such as mastery-based, competency-based grading. We've talked a lot about that in the past, so I won't talk too much there. We talked about detracking with extensions so that students can earn honors credit, which also fits into our model of reducing our school structures that inhibit equity. You see here the idea about the professional development at the beginning of the school year. There's a suggestion here that that be remote. And that when and if we bring kids back to school for the first time, we focus a significant amount on their social emotional learning before we dive into academics. At the high school level, again, we're looking at an emphasis on relevance of content, especially when kids are working remotely. And here we want to definitely include ways to thoughtfully address anti-racist pedagogy and ideas. One of the places where we have the least amount of teacher collaboration is at the high school. They have just 2 38-minute periods a week right now, not traditional schedule. We want to make sure that we can increase that. And that goes back to the idea that was presented in the family survey around early dismissal for students. And one of the big ideas that we've heard from the high school team is looking at a little bit more of an open campus format, so that some kids, particularly upperclassmen, might come in only when they actually have a class. And for some of them, they might do an internship first period, only come in for second and third period, and then leave because their fourth period class is actually an elective that's happening remotely. One of the things that we're really being cognizant of at the high school is the particular level of overcrowding with 2,000 kids and over 200 staff members in this building every day. So the more we can decrease the number of people in the building at a particular time, the better off we'll be. So we're looking at those pieces. In terms of student supports, I think one of the big ideas that I saw from this team was really identifying and tracking how we're engaging with kids who are struggling and making sure that we do one-on-one meetings with them within the first 2 weeks of school. And that would be for kids who need additional student supports across the whole district. And you can see that in the last bullet here, prioritizing building relationships. Although this one actually specifically refers to families that are new to the district, making sure that we engage them and create a relationship with them. For personnel and staffing, we've talked about a lot of this already, particularly developing a plan to support our high-risk staff. We've talked about the second bullet. One other idea that came up here was, our typical model for substitutes is teachers call in sick first thing in the morning, the assistant principal gets on the phone and calls a bunch of random people that are on our substitute list and says, can you come in, can you come in, can you come in, and keeps going down the list. And that's a little bit more random than I think we want to be in this day and age. So one of the suggestions was to have permanent full-time subs assigned to a particular building, which will be an added cost to the district. It's one of the things that we have to think about how we can finance. This is one of the pieces when Matt Cruz talked to us earlier about the budget and said there's going to be, at least another $1 million in carry forward. This is one of the priority pieces that we might want to look at in terms of spending and making sure that we can do that if it's possible. Let's see here. Ideas for special needs, specifically our life skills and small learning group kids and pre-kindergarten. And some of our EL students, particularly the ones with interrupted formal education and newcomers, is to have those kids come in full time, even if we are in a hybrid learning environment. So we definitely want to make sure that we are addressing the needs of our at-risk student population. And one way to do that is by bringing those kids in full time. You can see some other pieces of information here that the team is working on. Facilities and operations has done an absolute ton of work. And they have a ton of parameters and bulleted items that they're working on. And Carl Svensson and our facilities team have been working closely with this group to make sure that we're doing things like, we're going to have an outside auditor come in and check our HVAC systems. I can't even talk anymore, 4 hours. To make sure that they're meeting the standard of operation that has been suggested by the medical and other professionals. There are some other bullet points here. One that I'll highlight is the 6 feet minimum social distancing. The state has, put out in their guidance that 3 feet is adequate, but 6 feet is preferred. we're looking at the 6-seat piece just to make sure that our students and our teachers are as safe as possible. Another piece I'll highlight is that the team is emphasizing eating outside or in classrooms. We do not intend to serve, have a large meal service happening in cafeterias. Cheryl and her team are working already to make sure that we have the equipment we need to bring meals to students in classrooms. A struggle point for us with that will be the Lincoln School, where there's no elevator to get food up to the second floor. And so we might be looking at rotating students one class at a time to the cafeteria to pick up a meal and go back to the classroom with it. But all of those specifics need to be worked out. And then transportation. Some of these are items that we talked about before, such as having a monitor on each bus so that the driver can be focused on driving while the monitor focuses on making sure students are maintaining their social distance. We're still waiting on state guidance on transportation. That is due out either later this week or early next week. We do have a call with the commissioner tomorrow. And I anticipate the two things he's going to talk about maybe are transportation and fall athletics. Another big idea, and this applies to both the bus and the classroom, we are going to be making sure that students have assigned seats when they're present, and that will help us with any contact tracing. If a student is, oh, Stacy just told me I'm not taking slides, hold on. I might have too many screens open. Your screen sharing is paused. Okay. Hold on for 1 second. I'm gonna try to reshare that. I don't know how it got paused, but. Did you see the facilities and operations slide? Oh, okay.
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. All right. So I'll give you a second to read there, but the couple of things that I highlighted were the minimum 6 feet social distancing. No walkers is probably a big one. And then eat outside or in classrooms. And I had talked about the Lincoln School being a particular area of concern where there's no elevator. It'll be difficult to bring food up to the second floor. So in an environment like that, we probably need to think about rotating the kids through a space, one class at a time, to pick up food and return to the classroom to eat it. And then with transportation, you know, one of the suggestions from this team was requiring bus passes. And this goes back to the piece that Mr. Sinella brought up about we can't just have random kids showing up on a random day to take the bus, because we're going to have to be very organized in how many kids can fit and where they can fit and how far apart they need to be. So we would be looking at requiring bus passes for kids to access the bus at all. And I had talked about assigned seats and mentioned that this would also apply in the classroom. And that's to facilitate with contact tracing. If we do come to find that a student has tested positive, it'll be easy for us to identify who was near them and when. And so I'll wrap up this piece by just saying all of this is very preliminary. I know that even in the 24 hours since I created these slides, several of the teams met today and have made decisions and have added to this work and added notes. The preliminary drafts will be back a week from today. They're due back at midnight and should be out to you on the 29th. So we'll be able to have a fuller picture I can tell you that most of these groups have about 10 pages of notes. And I grabbed headlines from those notes just to share with the school committee and with families at home for a quick preview to see all of the hard work that these incredible teams are doing. There are about 12 to 15 members on each team. So, you know, it's a significant number of people doing this work, and we're incredibly thankful to them for all of the great thinking and research and information that they're culling over to make sure that we do, in whatever way we return to school, do it safely.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Any members?
Brian,
Mr. Sinella.
Through you to Diane. Being a high school teacher, you may not be familiar with the pattern for elementary students. They go to the bathroom en masse, second graders, first graders, kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And how are we going to handle that? And just regular usage of the bathroom. They usually go, if the class isn't going as a group, you can't send the first grader alone. So there's 2 of them. So 3 second grade classes send 2 at a time. There's 6. How are you going to control? I mean, you can't really control it. It's awkward. I mean, but this is a fact of life with elementary kids. And also on feeding, if there are still some kids at home, are we going to be responsible for feeding them also? I think it's a monumental task. I mean, I got to give you credit. You're still in there swinging, and you've got most of the answers, but you know as well as I, Murphy's Law, something's going to come up and throw a monkey wrench into it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be looking a little closer at the bathroom usage. And I think that's going to be one of your biggest problems.
Definitely. I think the saying that I like is the devil is in the details. And that's where we're really going to learn some things here. And one of the things that we've talked about a little bit, and I don't know that this is going to fly at the state level, but is doing kind of a roll-in start. So when we do start having in-person classes, I would prefer if each school had maybe 1 or 2 grade levels report initially. And we do some learning with that group for 2 or 3 days. And then we bring the next grade level back. And we build up until we have everybody back at once. And, the schools will have to decide, like, is it better to start off with kindergarten and first grade because they're going to be kind of the most work? Or is it better off to start off with like 4th and 5th grade because they'll be the easiest, but we'll still work with, we'll still learn from them, and those are the pieces that we still have to work out. And I'm not sure if there's even going to be support at the state level to do that kind of a rolled opening. But it's something that I think would help us so that we actually can learn for a few days and correct our mistakes. Because one thing that I know for certain is that this is not going to be perfect, no matter what we do. And we're going to actually have to do some things in order to learn what's working and what's not working and what we need to fix. So I guess I'll leave it at that. But certainly the teams are thinking about things like bathroom use, and absolutely we will need a plan to feed the kids that are home on their remote week if we're in a hybrid model, just as we've been feeding them when we're in a fully remote model. We certainly want to make sure that none of our kids are going without food. So that will continue to be a priority for us. One of the things that Cheryl and I talked about is maybe having food picked up at the neighborhood schools like we had initially done in March. So have all elementary schools offer meals to kids who are not in an in-person classroom that day. And even the middle school and high school kids can just go to their neighborhood school and get food there, rather than having a high schooler come all the way over from the Beachmont or the Point of Pines to the high school to pick up a sandwich on the days that they're doing remote learning. So that might help. And we also talked about maybe making sure that the food service for the kids in the school is completed before the window for pickup starts, so that we have adequate cafeteria staff available to run that pickup program you'll recall that Mrs. Rizzo and several of our teachers and nurses and social workers volunteered and pretty much ran that pickup service through the spring. We don't anticipate that anybody's going to be available to do that if we're in a hybrid or return to work model. So we are certainly, all of that is on our radar. And again, I want to say thank you and kudos to everybody on our team, from food services to our plant and maintenance team and facilities and custodians, the principals, the teachers. Everybody's really just doing an amazing job thinking about how to reinvent school right now. And I really feel like that's what we're doing. And I'm thankful to work with such an incredible team of people here in Revere who are able to think outside of the box and think of different ideas and think of solving problems in ways to make things work in a fashion that's good for teachers and good for kids and good for families.
Thank you.
Any other members? Mr. D'Ambrosio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two questions addressed to Dr. Kelly, and they're difficult questions, so I don't necessarily expect an exact answer now. But specifically, you know, what percentage of students in the system might have what we would consider to be underlying health conditions, because of course that will have to be considered as we move toward potentially reopening, and what percentage of students have adequate healthcare coverage and insurance coverage. So I perhaps like to speak with you about some data regarding those issues in the next week or so.
Sure, and the first question we could probably partially answer based on information that we have for students already. The second question, I don't have a good way to answer. I can certainly know a number of students that we know are direct certified, which likely implies that they receive Mass Health benefits. But that doesn't give us any information about anybody who's not direct certified, which represents about 50% of. So for the kids that are not direct certified, it's not a question that we ask families.
Thank you.
Any other members? Okay. Continue on, Dr. Kelly.
So the next item on the superintendent's report is just the announcement of the virtual town hall on Thursday, July 30th at 5 o'clock. And I would encourage parents and teachers and others to watch their email for a Zoom invite to that meeting. We should be sending that invite out in the next day or two. And one item I wanted to mention that was not on the superintendent's report, but should have been, as you can see, I'm quite forgetful. The second thing that's on the report, but we did have a meeting this morning for folks who are bidding to respond to our request for the services for an owner's project manager for the new Revere High School. So I just wanted to share that moment of excitement. I want to thank the OPM selection committee and the building committee for all of the hard work that they did in putting this proposal together. It was not a small task. And I have to say that Michael Picardi at the city and Carl Sensen and I really worked hard on this, and Mike in particular did several back and forths with me and with MSBA to make sure that we were meeting all of their requirements in the description of our request for services. So a big thank you to Michael. But the last day for respondents to submit questions is this Thursday. We're on a very tight deadline with everything else that is going on. We still have to continue process, of course, as this remains a district priority. But on August 4th, between July 29th and August 4th, the OPM selection committee will meet to identify the finalists for owner's project manager. And we will be conducting interviews between August 12th and 13th, and hope to name a finalist with whom we will negotiate a contract between August 13th and 17th. The step after that is that we have to put forward our plan to the MSBA. They have final review and approval rights. We anticipate that the OPM review panel meeting we will attend in order to finalize that process will be their September 14th meeting. And we anticipate an execution of a contract by September 21st. So what does all of that mean? That's when we can move on and actually select a designer and an architect who will start to design the new Revere High School and will help us come to a decision on where the high school is going to be situated, whether it is in the existing fields in our current high school building becomes fields, or if there are other opportunities in the city, such as an opportunity perhaps at the Wonderland site, or one of the things that we've been talking about is the Revere Housing Authority. And that one certainly is a much heavier lift in terms of the work that needs to be done at the state and federal level to get clearance for that land to be used in some kind of a land swap agreement or something like that. But we have been working with the mayor's office and continue to work with them on that as a possibility. So it's pretty exciting.
Certainly is.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly.
Good job.
We'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
Second.
Roll call the members.
Yes.
Yes.
Is Danielle here?
Dr. Garcia is going to call the roll.
I'm doing now. Mr. Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Mr. Anthony Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Michael Franti,
Yes.
Miss Susan Garrow,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick,
Yeah, you, Fred.
Oh, I couldn't hear him. Yes.
Miss Carol Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Arrigo.
Yes. Okay, the consent calendar has been approved. Report of subcommittees. Anything?
None?
No. Any old business? None. Any new business? Okay, school committee interests. Mrs. Rizzo?
I had brought up at the committee as a whole about supporting two names that were given to us for MASC president-elect. So I will ask for a motion to support those two names, which would be Deb Davis from Woburn and Andrea Wentworth from Lee.
There's a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, roll
Her
call.
name, her name is Wadsworth, just a correction on the name.
Well, I've been watching Wentworth on, it's a very good show, so it's in my mind.
We'll have a roll call the members on supporting Deb Davis and Andrea Wadsworth for MASC president.
Mr. Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Mr. Anthony Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Michael Ferrante,
Yes.
Miss Susan Garrow,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick Sanala,
Yes.
Miss Carol Ty,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Arrigo.
Yes. We'll move on to motions. First motion is a motion establishing an equity advisory board that will examine racial disability, gender, and religious equity issues in the Revere Public Schools. The advisory board will make recommendations no less than twice per academic year to the school committee and superintendent on concrete steps to improve equity in our educational policy, programming, and teaching ranks. Membership shall be approved by the school committee and may include faculty, administration, and special appointments. The superintendent shall select the chairperson who will communicate and coordinate the advisory board's recommendations to the school committee. Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If possible, I would just like to introduce some of the context for this motion. I think it's pretty clear that we are at an inflection point in the history of the city, and the times demand that we act seriously upon these issues of systemic inequity in our schools. The times also demand that this process of action incorporates input that is truly collaborative, so not only from administrators and elected officials, but also from educators, from community members and parents, and from independent appointees. Let Revere lead the Commonwealth right now in addressing equity issues at the school and system-wide level. I'm asking solely for an enabling vote today. We would be making a commitment to examine these equity issues in a new and innovative way, and we can collaboratively work out the mechanisms of this board in the coming months. But we need to make a commitment to doing so today. According to Massachusetts general law, Chapter 71, in Section 37, school committees have the right and duty to establish the educational goals and policies for the schools in the district. Now more than ever, we need to establish policies and goals regarding equity, and that is what this board would do. I'm open to any questions or.
Well, have you made the motion, Anthony?
The mayor just made the motion. We need to
The
second
mayor
it.
can't make a motion.
Oh, sorry. He read the motion. You read the motion.
He read it.
Okay.
I read the motion, correct. For the
So Anthony,
edification of the
why
public.
don't you make it?
Do I need to reread it?
Well, if you wish, but you could just say that you.
I will officially.
Motion to establish equity
Right.
advisory board.
Cool. So I officially make a motion to establish an equity advisory board. Do I have a second?
I have a second. Waiting for you.
Mrs. Rizzo?
So I have a question to the maker of the motion. Knowing that we already have one of those groups in place that have worked for the past 3 months, I'm wondering if you think there's something that is not working right with that group that you think needs to be improved upon to have another advisory group. And then after hearing some of the people speak on this earlier, they all most mentioned community. Now, I don't get me wrong, I am so glad that some of the people had already taken the initiative to start this group, because I think it's very important in the city. Not just at this time, it should have been years ago, it should have started. But where it's a community thing, I'm wondering if it should be something where we already have something in place at the school, if it should be out of City Hall or out of the mayor's office.
Sure. I'd love to respond. So regarding the equity task force, the equity team that already exists on the high school, my efforts to create this motion actually worked in tandem with their own efforts. The leaders of that team have worked closely with me.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to hear you, Anthony.
Okay, I apologize. Can you hear me now?
A little better.
Okay.
We're older. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. You know what? I'll scream. It's no issue. I have actually worked in tandem with the leaders of the equity task force and team at Revere High School thus far to come up with the idea and flesh out the idea of this board. However, it fulfills a fundamentally different function than the team that already exists at Revere High School. The team at Revere High School deals with Revere High School, pretty much specifically and exclusively. This board would address systemic inequity at a district-wide level within all of our schools and within sort of all of the systemic structures that exist therein. So to answer your question, it both fulfills a different goal, and the idea was generated with the help of leaders of that equity team. Now, to address the point about community involvement and some of the commentary that we received during the public speaking portion, I am very receptive to the idea of parental and student involvement on this board, and specifically that that idea can fall under the language of quote unquote special appointments, which is the third category of individuals that the school committee may appoint to this board, other than faculty and administration. So I'm, in full sync with many of the comments that we got today, and I think that this team, this board rather, will do a great job of furthering the great work that's already been started with the high school equity task force.
Okay, Mrs. Rizzo, anything further? No.
No, I guess not.
Okay. Mr. Franti?
To the maker of the motion, Anthony, you think that you should include, when the parents spoke, a couple of their concepts here where the parents and students should be involved with this board also? So it's in black and white, it doesn't come back and hurt us at some point? Just make an adjustment to it or addendum to it?
Sure, I'm open to the addendum of specifically mentioning parents and students. I do want to be clear that I think that they can easily be considered under the special appointments line, but if that is sort of the overwhelming position of the committee, I'm fine with amending it. And
that's just my suggestion, so this way you don't run into any kind of trouble. It's in black and white. This is what the motion said, so it doesn't come back,
Sure. How
That's
about
what I'm trying to do.
administration okay. With the amendment, should I reread the amended motion then with that in mind? Is that
well? So I think so Mr. Franti, are you suggesting or proposing an amendment to include both parents and students in the motion itself?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take I'll open it up to the members of the committee and see if they are in favor of that, and then we can read the final motion. It looks like Ms. Tai may have a comment though.
Well, the devil is always in the details, and there's a lot to be worked out when it's when this is, a really, the beginning of something that is huge. I know that other things have been done, but having this committee on reporting to the school committee here. So I think we need to be a little bit careful. And for example, I think that we should have in it something that it should represent all segments of the community. It should reflect what we have in Revere. So we should have from every ethnic community, if we can, we should have people, we should have parents, we should have kids, we should have teachers, we should have administrators. But I think it's actually going to require a little bit of looking at it and delving into it in not quite so hasty a way. So I might suggest, although I'm certainly perfectly happy to go along with whatever suggestions the maker of the motion has. We might spend some time figuring out, for example, how many people might be on this committee. We might want to figure out what the minimum would be, what the maximum would be. There are a lot of details to be discussed. So I'm a little reluctant although I'm not totally opposed to what Mr. Franti said, I'm a little reluctant just to add one or two things here or there, because I think that's too much of a piecemeal approach. But whatever the maker of the motion chooses.
If I may respond.
Mr. D'Ambrosio, yeah.
Thank you so much. So I agree that there are a lot of details to be hammered out. And actually, luckily, our policies committee on the school committee outlines the procedure for establishing and setting up the parameters for one of these advisory boards to the school committee. What I'm asking for tonight is a simple enabling vote for the for this motion and for the juxt of this board. And in the subsequent weeks and months, we will work closely together to hammer out those details of representation, of interaction, of size. But I really do think, above all else, tonight we need to make a commitment to affirming the need for this board, perhaps as originally stated within the motion.
Thank you, Mr. D'Ambrosio. Mrs. Rizzo.
I think I would feel more, myself, I think I agree with Carol. I would like to see and hear, I don't know, more details or more objectives and a little bit more planning as how the board would be set up. And yes, we do have it in our policies that we are allowed to have focus groups and whatnot with any of our staff through the superintendent. We are allowed that. It's been in our policies for about 15 years. But I do think I would appreciate, see, to me, I just think it's more of a community, City of Revere type of group. Because let's face it, we need it the whole city. It's not just a school problem, even though we do have problems in the school, whether it's students, staff, faculty, whatever. I would like to see it as a community project.
We'll go to Ms. Scrivelisi, and then Mr. D'Ambrosio, we'll go back to you.
Don't forget me.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Ty. No, Mrs. Scrivelisi, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As far as, anyone on this advisory board outside of school committee, staff and faculty, I believe that would just fall under the special appointments that is there. So, I mean, that includes everyone that everyone's talking about. Special appointments would be parents, staff, not staff, parents, students, people from different ethnic backgrounds. So I think that's clarified here in the motion. That was the only thing I wanted to add in. And, obviously that, the details of it would come after or if it's approved. So, I mean, I feel that that's kind of clear in there.
Thank you, Mrs. Scrivelisi. Mr. D'Ambrosio, and then Ms. Ty.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Scrivelisi. I completely agree. The special appointments category is broad enough so that it justifies parental appointment, student appointment, and community leader appointment of all kinds. Again, I just really want to bring our focus on the fact that this is an enabling vote, and this vote will be us making a public commitment that we are going to focus on these issues of equities within our schools right now. The details and the way that we hammer them out will be collaboratively sort of bargained for. We will, hammer out all of these concerns together. And I just urge us not to lose sort of the forest from the trees in a situation like this. There is a fantastic, as Ms. Rizzo mentioned, protocol for hammering out those details outlined within our own sort of established procedures. And I'd be more than happy to work with anybody after we enable this vote tonight to hammer out those details. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. D'Ambrosio. Ms. Ty.
Well, I was just going to agree with Stacy on this. So it's a back and forth that it would be wonderful if we could work together. And I'm hoping that when you, Mr. Mayor, when you get your Human Rights Commission, that's a natural collaboration for us. But in the meantime, we always need to operate on our own. So I have a suggestion for two different places this could go. It could go to the policy committee, or since there is a motion number B right there, creation of a subcommittee and naming it, it could also be referred there for some specifics about how to get representation from every aspect of the community. If the maker of that motion doesn't feel that that's appropriate there, then that's fine. I'm perfectly happy with seeing it go to the policy committee and letting it stand as Mr. D'Ambrosio has stated it in writing and in speaking.
Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Vote on it first.
I may. I'm not exactly sure what details of sort of fleshing out are so pressing that this needs to be kicked down the road further and sent to a policy committee or the proposed subcommittee on equity. I think that it's imperative, absolutely imperative, that we make this commitment tonight. There are details to be hammered out, but none of them are so significant as to derail the core spirit and message of this motion, and none of them would prohibit us from working very closely together in the following weeks to hammer out those details. I really don't think that there will be much disagreement with regard to the details that you've mentioned, and moreover, motions for boards like this typically don't list every single detail of their functionality and of the way that they work within the system. That latter part of fleshing out those details is, it's left for collaborative effort after the commitment has been made. Again, I'm asking everybody to make a commitment tonight to support this, because it's important to do right now, on this day, in this time, in this country, in this state, and in this city. The details, I don't think we're going to disagree over, and pushing this down the road even further will just result in a potential loss of focus and a loss of energy on what I see to be one of the most important issues of my lifetime, and certainly all of yours.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move the motion.
So before we move any further, we still have there was an amendment on the floor from Mr. Franti. And so we'll Ms. Franti, do you want to move forward with that amendment?
Well, probably not at this point, Mr. Mayor, because the way this whole thing's going is sort of broader than what I really thought we should do. It's just becoming a big thing, which is going to be more of a community thing than just a school department thing. So at this time, I will withdraw my motion.
Okay. So the amendment's been withdrawn. The motion's still on the floor.
So I move the motion.
There's a second.
No, we don't. I'm moving the motion just means we should bring it forward. That's all.
Right,
Anthony
you
already
seconded.
made the motion.
And Carol seconded.
And I seconded it, yes.
Right.
And now we vote.
So, and we'll take a roll call on the motion.
Mr. Stacy Bronson Rizzo.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, point of information,
Mr. Sinella, state your point.
just clarify, the motion was amended, was the motion seconded? The second has to withdraw.
Yes, I seconded it.
The amendment was withdrawn, right? The amendment was withdrawn. The original motion was seconded by Ms. Ty.
And now we vote.
Okay, we're voting on the original motion
On the original motion,
as
correct.
it presented. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Stacy Rizzo.
On the original motion, no.
Mr. Anthony D'Ambrosio.
Yes.
Mr. Michael Ferranti.
No.
Ms. Susan Gravellese.
Yes.
Mr. Frederick Sanella.
No.
Ms. Carol Ty.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor Brian Arrigo.
Yes.
If I may say something, thank you all so much. This is going to be very important.
Thank you, Mr. D'Ambrosio. The next item on the agenda is a motion establishing the creation of a new subcommittee and naming it the Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Subcommittee. Mrs. Rizzo?
So last month, I was proud that this committee voted unanimously on an anti-racism resolution. And so that our commitment is strong and that we didn't do this in words only. I would like for this subcommittee to be put together. The objective of this is using the equity lens to aim to provide common vocabulary and protocol for evaluating policies and programs, practices, and decisions, and also to produce policies, programs, practices, which will result and a more equitable outcome for our school district.
So are you making this motion?
It is my motion, yes.
That was Mrs. Rizzo's motion, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Second it. I'll second it.
In a second.
Second. I will.
Mr. Stacy,
We'll take a roll call.
Mr. Stacy Bronson Rizzo,
Yes.
Mr. Anthony D'Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Michael Ferranti,
Yes.
Miss Susan Gravelise,
Yes.
Mr. Frederick Sanella,
Yes.
Miss Carol Tai,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Arrigo.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
and the next motion that's on the agenda was already approved. Any other further business from any committee members?
Can I just add one thing?
Mrs. Rizzo.
Like I wasn't going to anyhow. We've all received this flyer in the past 2 weeks from MASC on charting of the course, which is required for all new school committee members to take. But also it's very important for veteran school committee members. So with the COVID and how difficult it is, they are putting together a series of Zoom courses together. So I'm hoping that, you know, we can kind of do our professional development and maybe jump in on a couple of them. Anthony, there's a couple different times that might meet your schedule, which is that would provide your 8 hours required by law to do. So hopefully it can work out, you know, it's 5:30 to 7 or 7:30 to 9.
Yeah, thank you.
So hopefully it can meet your schedule, but it would be nice if others could attend just as professional development.
When is it, Stacy? Did they have a date?
Did you get a flyer?
I
Didn't you
probably
get-
do, but I probably did, but I'm just asking you.
You know what? Maybe I'll make a copy and send it to everyone and,
Yeah, we got the flyer.
you know, it's open meeting, you know, we always have to check the box on that one. And, you know, our roles and responsibilities as school committee members on special education, on ethics, on business, on collective bargaining, all important parts of our job. And hope to see you guys there.
Okay. Any other members? Seeing no further business before the committee, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right. Our next meeting will be August, when, Diane? 10. Okay. See everyone then. Thank you.
Okay. Good
Okay,
night.
good night.
Thank you all.
Night.
Good night.
Night.